Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and this evening joining us is Brett McCallum, author of Kids Aren't Born A-Holes. Good evening, Brett. How are you?
G'day, mate. How you doing?
I'm very good. Thank you for joining us.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
So I want you to tell everybody, what is Kids Aren't Born A-Holes all about, and where did that derive from?
Mate, I think the title pretty much covers it, but the whole title is Kids Aren't Born A-Holes. They're taught to become a-holes. And what we wanted to do was actually break down whether parenting changes the way kids are actually perceived, or whether kids just go off and do this stuff on their own. And what I did was I wanted to put that in words because I was in Hawaii actually, and I got this really good comment from a waitress saying how wonderful my children were. Nothing to do with me, it's all my wife. But the big thing there is that I'm sitting there and I actually said to her, why? Well, why do you say that? And she goes, seriously, they were really nice to me. They were polite. They said, thank you. And none of them had an iPad. And my kids have never had iPads at the dinner table, or we don't watch TV at the dinner table. And it just got me wondering. And I looked around and every other kid was sat there in front of their iPad, not talking to their family, whereas my kids were having a conversation with us. And I thought, I wonder how that would go. And so I made a really conscious effort to start asking people questions, and that's where it came from.
Yeah. So when you say, that the waitress commented and stuff, did you find that a lot of people were aware of your children's behaviours, or was it just that one-off time?
No, it happens all the time, and I've never really taken that much notice of it. My wife does. We say thank you and all that sort of stuff, and my kids are always pleased and thank you and all that, because that's the way I was brought up. And I'm very much a believer in old school values. I still open the car door for my wife. We hold hands when we walk down the street, and those sort of things. I want to teach my kids those things. But what I've found is that people have now got opportunities to not actually do that with their children by giving them a bit of, we call it in the book, digital anesthetic, is you give the kids that and they go, and they don't actually communicate. Whereas I sit at a meal and I actually want to talk to my kids. I want to see how their day was and all that sort of stuff. And it hasn't always been like, don't get me wrong, and I'm definitely not the perfect parent. But at the same time, it's just really interesting when you start talking to people about, like, is this a true statement or how's that work?
So do you think that model of parenting is a conscious decision, as you say, or an unconscious? Like you said, you've been doing it because it was what you were done. But do you think parents can make a conscious choice about how they raise the children? Is that
100%, mate? 100%. We look at it from the point of view of we parent our children together, and I'm very lucky. I've got an amazing wife of 25 years. I tell her how lucky she is every day of her life, and that's the reason why we're such a happy couple. But the thing is that what we do with our children is we consciously parent them. Like, I will never go against her if she's had a crack at one of the kids for doing something stupid. I'll always back her up. Even if I don't agree with her, we might have words behind closed doors and say, hey, what'd you do that for? But at the same time, I think you need to sort of have that line. There needs to be a line in the sand. Kids need to know what the difference is and what, like, you look at, I live up on the Gold Coast, and at the moment we've got this pandemic of children committing crime.
Yeah. Like,
where are their parents? It's really a simple question. And they go off. Well, say no.
Yeah.
Say, sorry, no, you can't steal one car tonight, or lock them up, one of the other two. But the thing is, if you actually parent the kids, and this is something, and this is not me getting on my high horse, I know I get very passionate about this stuff. If you parent your kids, then they'll know what's right and what's wrong. And that's the big difference between how we live today and how we used to live.
Oh God, yeah. When I was a kid, you wouldn't back chat. You'd get a slap.
Oh hell no, you get a smack across the. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. TV. We had one TV in the lounge room. It was like, it wasn't portable and it wasn't going anywhere. And you had half an hour, I think I used to get to watch a bit of show after the news.
Well, I'll tell you now, my kids get that now. And I may be the worst parent in the world, maybe, and I'm definitely not the best, but we actually have time where the kids can play the computer games, where the kids can do that. None of my kids under the age of 16 have Instagram or have any social media. And the reason that is because they can't be trusted with it. They do stupid shit. Kids do stupid stuff. Sorry, I dropped the clanger already. We're only 3 minutes in. But that's it is. I get really passionate about this stuff because it's so true. And the thing is, people always say to us, how do you do that? How do you do that? I say no.
That's it.
Oh, but you can't do that.
Yeah.
Why not? Yeah. I can say
Be
no.
a parent.
Be the parent, exactly. And that's what this is all about, mate.
So just for that purpose too, just so people understand watching, I mean, you are very passionate about it, but just for 100%. The viewers to make sure they understand, this is not you preaching, you know.
Oh, hell no.
It's not you creating psychological parameters for them as parents to meet. You know, it's really about evaluating a self-awareness of little things, really, that they can just be aware of. As their unconscious parenting is just getting out of habit, you know, and it's not working for society in a general sense.
Mate, people ask me how I can give advice, and I actually write this in the book. I've got 4 kids. My kids now are 18 through 11. And at the same time, I've been an arsehole like 46 years of my life. So I'm pretty much an expert in that space. But I dropped another one, apologise for that. But at the same time is the fact that it's not just me. What I've done, I'm a podcaster. I do a lot of podcasting, as you know. And every single guest I've had over the last year and a half, I've asked them the question, are kids born a-holes or are they taught to become a-holes? And every single guest said they're not born that way. They don't pop out the womb and go, woohoo, let's go, I'm going to be an asshole. They actually... exactly. But they're actually, it's because they're either not parented. And then people say, oh, but people have a hard time and they have single... I understand all that completely. And that's not something that I'm trying to turn around and not... I don't judge anyone, mate. People have got lives. Everything happens to people. But at the same time is people just need to learn to say no to their kids. But it's not just that. It's also society. Society's changed. Like the biggest bugbear in my whole life is the 8th place trophy. There's a whole chapter in this book based around the 8th place trophy. Whatever happened to kids actually getting taught how to lose? Like, that's right. First, everyone's second, and third get a ribbon. But like everyone's a ribbon and gets a prize. Well done, Johnny. You come 127th. But the thing is, the 8th place trophy is so frustrating because kids don't learn how to lose. And
they don't strive.
Exactly. And the thing is, if I don't need to care, why do I care? If I don't need to practice or I don't need to be the best at that, why do I bother? And that's one of the other frustrations.
That's right. My accolades, I'm still praised for being secondary, you know, and I think that's 100%. Part of social. Yeah, and I think that's part of social media's deficit to the world, you know, as well. It does encourage or misconceive people's successes and losses, very, I guess, unsubstantiated as well. So you create an illusional life in the social media world. And I think kids absorb that very quickly if they're not taught how the real world works first before they get into the social media world.
Oh, mate, and it's so true. And I make a point every single night of telling, especially my sons, because they're a little bit different than my daughters, of how proud of them I am. And I give them a hug every night, I give them a kiss, I put them to bed and say, mate, I'm so proud of you. And it's something that I didn't get as a kid from my dad, which I always wanted. And I think that's the main reason I do it. But at the same time is I also tell them, if they lost that game, mate, you lost that tonight. That's okay. Go and shake the bloke's hand, say, well done, congrats on winning, and be a good loser. Yeah. Because absolutely. If you can, like, I'm really proud of you. You tried your hardest, you did that. There's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. Yeah. But you don't need a trophy for it.
Yeah. So tell me too, one thing, just on the book itself, like you're talking, like, you know, the overall parenting consensus is quite a broad topic, very, very individualized and debatable by every parent watching in their own ways. But what about the book? Was it hard to construct the book, really keeping it to your own personal experiences and not get involved in that political or social issues and really like let it snowball? Like, how did you control the book itself? Like, what was your goal in the book?
I'm a very opinionated human being. I have an opinionated
really? Anyone notice that?
I have an opinion about a lot of things, but at the same time is I also swear a lot. I'm doing really good tonight, but I also swear a lot. And in the book, like my wife picked up that there's a lot of F-bombs at the very front of the book. But what that's about is that one of my favorite books I've ever read is Mark Manson's The Subtle Art of Not Giving an F. See, I didn't drop it there. Yep. Pretty proud of myself. But the thing is that all that is it tells you about you have one bucket of Fs to give in your whole life. Don't give them all away at once. So my personal opinion is my opinion. And I'd love for someone to argue that opinion with me. I'd love to sit here and you turn around and go, but mate, everyone needs an 8th place trophy because my child, that's awesome for your kid. I'm only telling you about my experiences and the people I've spoke to. And it's really interesting because there's a chapter in the book called Digital Anesthetic. And what that's about is like I interviewed this guy, and he's been in hospitality for years and years. And one of the big things is that he was serving coffee in a cafe one day, and literally the mums come into the cafe, they sit down to have their coffee, and all the kids are running around everywhere. He goes, I nearly killed this child because I had hot tea in my hand and the kids whacked me on the legs because the mother didn't give a shit. She just sat there and didn't. And it's like, oh, what have you done to my child? He's now crying. Mate, I nearly killed the kid because I tipped. But the thing is, it's really interesting when you start delving into a lot of these different topics. And as I say, I'd love to have the debate with anyone about any of the topics in the book, but it's all really down to my opinion. And and that's the sort of focus I've tried to put on. Very hard thing to do because once again, I'm very opinionated, but we've tried to actually keep that as sort of close to me as possible to tell you what my opinion is. And hopefully it's going to help a couple of people.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's a really good book. It's well thought out. So on that topic too, when did you decide it was going to become a book? Obviously, you got conscious in Hawaii about somebody noticing your children and it happening a lot. When did you sit down and say to your wife, honey, I'm going to write all these episodes out and just see where we go? When did that happen for you?
Oh, I do that sort of stuff a lot, and she rolls her eyes at me, which I always think is a term of endearment. But no, it was quite funny actually. And the first chapter and a half, I wrote on my mobile phone in notes with my two thumbs. And the irony of that, of actually about talking about kids with mobile phones and kids and social media, and the fact I was actually laying in bed one night going bang, bang, bang on my phone. And also on the way back on the plane, we had like a lot of time on the plane. And then when I got home, I said, look, I really want to write a book about this. And she said, okay, that's fine, doll, like go for your life. And she's always praises me and stuff. But the thing is, I said to her, she goes, the problem is that people are going to see this as your opinion. I went, yeah, that's fine. But let's ask as many people as we can to see whether they've got the same opinion before we even go to that next step. And that's what we did.
Yeah. And did you research into experts, or did you keep away from that? You just kept it into personal experiences? Yeah,
it's funny. I spoke to some experts. So, for instance, one of the podcasts we do is called The Third Beer, and there's a psychologist on there. And so I spoke to him about a lot. I spoke to school principals. I spoke to my mate Garth, who works down at the local pub because he's opinionated about everything. So I spoke to the beer bloke, and I spoke to the expert. But at the same time, there is zero study done in this book. This is all done on people's conversations and actually having an open, frank discussion with people, which what I would love people to read it is that way. This is me having an open, frank discussion with you about my thoughts.
So did you, in that basis, get your children's input to the book? In the sense that they're the model, I guess you'd say, of the references. How did they find the books?
Well, my kids know what I'm like, and my kids know that I do swear probably a little bit too much, and at the same time, they tend to agree. But they don't know any different because that's the way they've been brought up. They see what their mates do and what their mates can't do. They know what they're not allowed, what they are allowed. They sit there and they also try and get away. They're kids. They're going to try and get away with stuff. I'll tell you a story. Last night, I've gone in to say goodnight to my little fella, my eldest son, and he quickly shoved something under the covers, and he'd been in bed for half an hour, and I've gone, what are you doing? And he goes, nothing. So obviously he's done something, and he had his iPad in his room, and we don't allow iPads in bedrooms. And I what are you doing, mate? And he said, oh, I'm watching a video. It's like, you're supposed to be in bed half an hour ago. But then I said to him, how often have you done this? And he goes, I did it last night as well, Dad. So the fact that he knows he's not in the good books, he's in trouble, but he can also admit that he's done something wrong, that makes a big difference to me. Is the fact that I can have an open conversation with my kids about anything, and sometimes they tell me way too, especially the girls, they tell me way too much stuff that I don't really need to know. But at the same time, I want them to be able to come to me. I want them to tell me if they're in trouble or any of that sort of stuff. We will not judge anything. We'll help them as much as we can. There will be consequences for actions. That's the only difference.
Absolutely, and that's good. It's good you've got that integrity in them. And I think that's a part of parenting is making them responsible and accountable for their own selves, but also encouraging them to take ownership of mistakes and successes equally. I agree.
You do, and at the same time is like we also write in the book about social media, and social media, as we all know, is not a good thing. No matter what happens. I'm addicted. I'm addicted to social media. That's part of my business. It's part of what I do as well. But at the same time I'm personally trying to cut back a lot, and it's difficult. It's an addiction and people have this. But what my kids do is they don't get access to it, or they don't get the time to actually do it. It's a privilege as opposed to something they can do all day, every day. And that's a big difference, because once again, parents say, how do you do that? It's like, say no. Like it's I write in the book about how we put our kids have contracts in regards to social media. You agree to do this, this, and this, and then we agree to do that. It's that's the sort of thing that we try and put to them.
And it's good, it just makes them, again, that consciousness, the awareness. Which is
they've got to learn at some stage, don't they? I'd rather them learn now.
That's right, and a better learning from you and maintaining a relationship. Because they learn incorrectly through other peers or other people in their lives sometimes, I've seen. So, but no, that's really good, Brett. So tell me, when you're writing the book, how many hours did you allocate? How much time did you have to really put this book together? Because you're a very busy man. I know
I'm a very busy man.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what I did, and I'll admit it, I'll put my hand up, is the majority of my book is actually transcribed from audio. So what I like to do is I speak a lot, I interview people, I do that sort of stuff. So I actually then transcribed all the audio from the podcasts that I do, and also from discussions that I've had, where obviously they let me record it. I asked them permission first. But then I transcribe that and then actually edit that. And that was a key to this. Otherwise it probably would never have got written.
Yeah, because sitting down physically for you probably wouldn't have been as a focal point, because you're a very thoughtful person. Like your mind acts 100 times quicker than you can type probably as well.
I'll tell you, that's what I miss about aeroplanes at the moment. These aeroplanes used to be my writing time, and the fact that I used to travel a lot, and I still do travel a lot for work when we're allowed to. I found that on the plane I can sit there and I get a beer or something, and I sit there and I can actually just write. Whereas I haven't been able to do that now for like nearly 18 months, and I've quite missed that actually.
Yeah, and we've missed the book sales too for the airports.
Exactly.
we don't get a lot of the readers who read on planes as much anymore. But yeah, no, that's really good. So when you're dictating the book, how much time do you allocate towards that? And then when you revise it, do you have to like go back and remember what you said and think about, like once it's transcribed, do you have to have a different perspective on that again? Like, what's your writing process for us?
Well, it's interesting because I tell everyone I've got Snapchat brain, which means I can only remember what I said 6 seconds ago. So the good thing about recording this stuff is the fact that it's there, and I can actually then go back and listen and do all that sort of thing. But also what I find is that my first thoughts is actually usually my actual thought. So from that point of view, I'd say I allocate 2 to 3 hours a week to do podcasting. And a lot of that's based out of there. And then from an edit process, I've got a great EA. She looks after me. You've met her. And she looks after me a lot. And at the same time, she makes sure that I allocate time to do the proofreading, do the editing, do the other bits and pieces that I need. So this book probably could have been written and published a year and a half ago. But I started, I was looking today, I think it was 2019 when I was in Hawaii, that we actually started the process, and it's something that could have happened a lot quicker. And if I had a dedicated time to it, I honestly believe I could write a book in 3 or 4 weeks. But at the same time, it's never going to happen.
It's time. It's the economy of time, and I think that's what people miss. And that's what writing is. It's that discipline of putting time aside, putting a time of focus on that project.
Yes.
And having said that, it is, but the way it's done, the way it's written, even transcribed, it still keeps your authenticity, your voice. As you say, your first probably words that you spoke were the original words of the book. And I think that's really important. And it hasn't got that you haven't tried to intellectualize it. I think in some degrees, these sort of books can be very, very easily intellectualized or over-intellectualized. And I mean, you've given it the intellect of your own experience, which is what I mean, but you haven't given it that thesis feel where you're telling and dictating. And it's
I'm definitely not the thesis type of bloke, and at the same time when I write, I want a conversation. So I want it to be that I'm sat next to you in a bar or in a coffee shop telling you the story. and sort of saying, so you can actually feel like you're immersed in it. And that's something that's really important to me. I don't want to lose my voice. Hence the reason why there's some profanity in there. Hence the reason why you just get me, and it's that simple. And that's the reason for the title. And one of the things I have to say with Shoreline, and I really, really do appreciate it, is the cover. The cover of this book is one of my favorite things ever. And the original version we put up, and you said no, which I really do thank you for, is the fact that I love it. I love the little fella on the cover, and I love I love that. And to me, it just sort of tells the story before you even get into it, and that's the fun and the part of the book that I want to portray.
Good. No, I enjoy the cover. I think the book's great too. So tell us about like what are your goals coming forward from this book? Like, where are you going? What's the next thing for Brett McCallum? What's coming up for us to expect?
Mate, well, I'm going to come to a symposium in Melbourne and launch the book, which I'm very excited about. And hopefully I can talk to some people down there and give you 15 minutes of something interesting on stage. That should be interesting. And then post that. I just want to keep writing. I love the fact of holding my own book in my hand. And the thing is, obviously we want to sell a bazillion of them, but at the same time, that's for everyone's benefit. But the fact that I failed English in school, I was that kid that was always told they were never going to get anywhere by my school teachers, to then sit there and hold a book and say, hey, get that up here, is one of the things that makes me happy. But at the same time, mate, I'm an entrepreneur, as you know. I want to look at seeing what we can do with this book and then with the next few books, and we'll see how we go from there.
That's awesome, mate. That's awesome. People watching, everybody watching, the book is available in July, coming up, for Brett McCallum. Kids Aren't Born A-Holes.
You can say it. Go on, say it.
Kids Aren't Born Assholes.
There we go.
So it is a wonderful book, and it's for new parents, existing parents, idealistic parents, whatever you are. Be a parent, just love kids and treat them as kids, and this book will benefit you. It's available in every bookstore and online, wherever books are sold, and we ask you to go to your local bookstore to buy books. This small business needs your help as well, so always support your local bookstore. Thank you, Brett, for your time this evening. That was fabulous. We're looking forward to this book's release. We're looking forward to the feedback, and also more books hopefully to come in the future.
Indeed. Thanks, mate. Thanks so much for tonight. Really appreciate it. And Shoreline Publishing, it's been awesome. I really love the experience. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, mate. Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for watching.
Cheers,
take care.
Peace.
Get my game face on.
Hang on.
I'm really tired. I've just got to make myself a bit of energy. Slap, slap, slap. All right. Okay. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us on Between the Covers. My name is Bradley Shaw, and tonight I'm speaking with Brett McCallum, author of... Brett, want a pre-frame? That's what we talked about. I'm going to stop for a second. I'll come back and do that in a minute. The book title, I think we'll refer to it as Kids Aren't Born A-Holes.
A-Holes.
That work okay for you?
That works fine for me. Oh, mate, we'll see. It'll probably turn into arse at some stage, but
I think people know.
Let's start with A-holes. There you go.
I just thought I'd start with A-holes, and then we'll just go through.
It'll
and
change,
as I said,
that's fine.
if you drop a few bombs in there, don't panic. But I think it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think just for the first 30 seconds, we should at least have a little bit of decorum into it.
A little.
We don't want to drop everything.
You need to leave this bit in the actual the video thing. That's good.
This is Brad, the producer, coaching his author. Yeah. Okay.
Now.